I'm here today with JJ Parker, CEO of Carousel. How you doing today?
Great. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Great to have you on the show. You are a multipreneur like myself, worked on
Yes.
a lot of different businesses and a lot of different projects, irons in the fire. And I'd love to hear about that journey, but just tell me about kind of what started you on this whole journey of entrepreneurship.
Well, so, as a kid, I didn't intend to be an entrepreneur. I always was kind of like interested in different things, but my main thing as a young person was in early tech and specifically around graphic design and art. So I actually went to art school for college.
Nice.
So I'm not like a classically trained business person here. But when I was going to college in 1996, I was working at the local school district in the town I was living in, and my buddy was working for a company that was also kind of like servicing the local school district. And one of the things that we had to do back then was we had to train the teachers how to use video bulletin board software. So I don't know, Eric, you got to remember this from your childhood. Like you'd have your elementary school or your middle school, and there'd be like a big tube TV hung up in the corner.
Sure.
Right? Do you remember this?
Yeah.
These are like giant 100-pound bricks waiting to crush children.
Yeah.
But, the teachers would put the lunch menus and like what's going on in the school up on those monitors. Well, we would have to go train those teachers how to use this software to update that information like over and over, right? It was super frustrating. And one day it kind of dawned on us, like the teachers aren't dumb. The problem is that the software was made for multimedia designers, not for teachers. So we set off to like kind of solve that problem. It's kind of like solving our own problem a bit. And since I was going to art school, this is like very early web stuff, like 1996, right? This would be like, I don't know what we were running back then, like Perl scripts or something, right? Like it was very, very simple stuff. And our idea was that we would make a web page where teachers could update the information and it would show up onto that tube TV. Well, we kind of ran around and tried to find some computer programmers. We could never, every programmer we talked to, they were like, yeah, dudes, web pages and televisions don't connect. We're like, come on, they got to connect. So we didn't get anywhere. So we got a $5,000 loan from his mom, and we bought a laptop and a stack of programming books, like yay tall. And I programmed the first version of the software, and he sold a copy of it to our local school district, and that was it.
That was it. Yeah. I love it. This is, so I'm a human-centered design evangelist, and this is, I think, a perfect example of human-centered design and an area where still to this day, the majority of founders that I meet with and work with still get it wrong. You mentioned, right? People built this software for themselves, for the multimedia designers, not for their users, for the teachers. Engineers build apps for engineers, designers build apps for designers, product people build apps for product people. We are all so close to the thing that we're building that it is really difficult to actually put yourself in the shoes of your customers. And that's what human-centered design is all about. And so we make things that are too complex, or we make things that have too many bells and whistles or too much functionality, or that rely on you to have too much knowledge of the thing that you're doing. It's really hard to build something that's actually simple and actually designed for the people that are using it. But at the same time, if you don't do that, well, you're simply going to fail. And that's a lot harder than actually just doing the work of figuring out what your who your customers are and how they actually need to use it. So tell me about this. How did you learn how the teachers wanted to or needed to interact with this system to make it useful?
Well, in the early days, it was just because we were training them. Like we were in the schools, we were meeting with them. They're like, here, you got to click here, you got to click there. Then you got, and they're like, this is tedious. So we kind of
So
intuitively
you're providing the service.
knew, yeah, we were providing like the training service. So, so as the trainers, we knew exactly what the problem was and what the use case
So
was.
for folks in the audience, there is a theme here. If you go back and listen to several of the episodes, especially the ones that have come up recently that we've done in this podcast, it keeps coming up that these aha moments where it's really clicked for entrepreneurs is where they've provided the service, where they've really sat down with their customers and tried to do the thing in a non-scalable way. And that helped them really not only learn their customers, but really learn how the workflow needs to be designed in order to make it actually usable for their customers. So
that's a really interesting thing, when we're talking about entrepreneurship, right? Like one of the things recently, I'm going to sound like an old fogey, but like over the last maybe 10 years, like when I went to college, entrepreneurship wasn't like a track. Like you couldn't go to school for entrepreneurship, right?
Yeah.
More recently, there is a track in entrepreneurship, but I always think it's very interesting. Exactly what you're saying, Eric, is this idea that like, can you be an entrepreneur and look and do like an analytical view of a market and then start creating a product to fit that market? Or, like you're saying, you're like living in the market. You feel and have worked in environments that are not working, and then you kind of extract the idea out of that.
Yes.
There's probably pros and cons of each approach, but I've certainly felt the pros of, feeling the pain firsthand and then creating the products to address those problems.
Yeah, no, exactly. And in my experience, those are the ones that end up being the most successful. So I call it the outsider syndrome, but this is pretty typical of serial entrepreneurs, is they see a problem in a market that isn't them, and they go and try to build a solution and sell it into that market, but also trying to sell it as a product or as a SaaS typically, without actually getting their hands dirty, right? So without actually being in there and living that problem and actually providing that service, again, in a non-scalable way to really understand what it takes to one is understand the problem, but two, to really solve the problem, and then figure out, okay, let's codify this in software. Let's go and take the thing that we've fiddled with a million different ways and we've refined it and we fine-tuned it. Now let's go make it permanent through some automation. And again, too many founders just say, well, I'm going to go I need to build a SaaS. I need to build something that's scalable and that's turnkey and that's fully automated with no human intervention. Like, really? So like you think that a machine is going to be able to handle all of the nuances and the twists and turns better than a human? And the answer is pretty much flat out no.
So I like this. You get your advice. Go get a job that sucks.
Yeah.
Solve that problem. Become an entrepreneur.
Absolutely. Right. Go get a job, deal with all the frustrations and all the nasty things that go with, with getting your hands dirty, and then say, oh my gosh, okay, let's fix this one part of it. And let's really refine it and fine tune it. And then let's build some tools to make that easier and streamlined. And then let's figure out how to productize it and scale it.
One of my other businesses is called Cablecast, and we started that one, let's see, like early 2000s. And it also came from one of my jobs. I worked at a TV station, but the local government TV station, not like NBC or something, but like the little community access and government TV station. Well, my job there was to program the playback system. So it'd be like 6 p.m. The city council meeting plays off of VCR number 4. And you play that for, an hour and 43 minutes and 12 seconds, and then you stop it, and then you switch back. So you had to like manually program this playback device, program like a piece of hardware with like 4 buttons. It was like the most tedious thing. And then you had to do math on how to add time. Like adding time, especially when it's not round numbers, is horrible. So I would always screw that job up all the time, right? Because I did get my math wrong, or I get distracted, whatever. So that's another product where I solved the problem for myself. Like I wrote automation software to do all of that math for me, and that actually turned into a product that we call Cablecast, and it runs like most of the government TV stations in the United States right now.
Wow. That's amazing. See, exactly. So you figure you took a job or you provide a service, and again, a very manual and non-scalable way. You identify a frustration, a pain point, some friction. You figure out, how do I build some tool to automate this? How do I own the IP? Certainly is an important part of it. And then how do I figure out a way to scale this up? I mean, I really do believe this is not the only way, but a really great way to become a successful entrepreneur, because the opposite, or the alternative to it, is just it's so risky. You're leaving everything up to luck, right? Yep. That without really understanding the market, without really understanding the problem, you can build something that everybody is going to want, and it's going to work, and everybody's going to use it. I think those types of plays are just very rare and again, very risky.
Yeah.
So that's really interesting. So it sounds like, you've obviously got your career has been sort of multimedia. I guess what is the landscape? We had talked about you're a multipreneur, but what is that like, sort of running several different parallel businesses? Yeah,
I would say kind of like my general specialty would be media, playback, or communication software tools. So Carousel is a digital signage software, which allows people to create and manage content on displays in public areas. We do a lot of education, corporate communication, things like that. And Cablecast, I mentioned, does television automation and playback for local television. Along the way, I've had a couple various other things. Like I had a coaching startup for a while where we were trying to bring professional coaching to everyone in an organization, not just the C-level. So we would do like a quick personality test for users, and then we would provide like semi-customized video coaching for that individual. Like, for example, if I'm an introvert, and so when I come across an extrovert who's just talking nonstop, it, at best annoys me. At worst makes me really frustrated and stop listening to them. So this idea that we'd like create coaching opportunities to help people communicate better based on their kind of pre-wired dispositions. So I did that. I've got another startup called Screenweave that does screen and webcam recording in service of corporate communication. And a bunch of other kind of side art projects. I call them art projects because they're not like fully formed businesses just yet, but they're maybe like semi-going concerns.
But it's interesting because you're doing the discovery, right? You're exploring these different markets and seeing if you can provide a really great solution that clicks. So what are some of the challenges or growing pains that you struggle with in either managing all of these businesses at once or in any one particular?
Well, yeah, we could talk about this idea about being a parallel entrepreneur, having lots of balls in the air. For me, this idea that like you have to pick one thing and you have to completely focus like 100% of your time on it, or else it will fail. I think is a little bit of like not quite true. In my opinion, it's not, or my experience so far, it's not quite true. I am the kind of personality that kind of needs a lot of things in the air. In one way, it actually like helps me stay focused. When you have an early stage company, I think you have to be like totally all in, eat, sleep, and breathe. Like your startup, get in the mind of your customer, just like you're saying. As your organizations become more mature, I think one of the dangers that entrepreneurs will fall in is that they actually don't let go of that fast enough. Right? I spent many years like making sure I was in absolutely every little detail of every little thing, but that's not scalable or even very reasonable if you think about it. Yeah. So this idea like letting go and to the point where it affords me the ability to go kind of dabble and work on other things. It's really taught me to like delegate effectively, right? Since I'm not there like, every second of the day and I don't know all the details anymore. I really do have to trust my leadership team. I have to hire right. I have to delegate right. I have to set goals right. I have to keep people accountable, right? Do all of those things, and which are kind of hard to do. Like when you're the founder of a company, like you're very used to knowing all of the things. So it takes a bit of practice to learn to let go of needing to know all the things.
Interesting. So it sounds like you kind of have a gift for delegation then, that you're able to not only, emotionally let go, but structurally as well. It sounds like you actually have the system in place so you can really delegate.
Yeah,
so
my stated career goal is to not have a job.
Sure. So what does that look like? So you start up a new venture, you're fully focused in it. At what point, how big is the company, or at what point do you say to yourself, okay, it's time for me to get out of the critical path and put some leadership in place? When does that transition happen?
Well, that's a great question. I don't think it happened very cleanly. How about that? Yeah. Very messy in the middle of, one of the things with having a company that's 25 years old, it's almost like the company has been through like a couple different versions of itself, right? It's like there's kind of like the early version of it, a couple versions in the middle, and then what it is today. They all look vastly different. So, so I don't know that I have a super clean answer for that, but there is a point, for me, and not to be, I guess, like too self-disparaging about the whole thing, but like I'm an art school kid. Like I don't have an MBA, I don't have a fancy degree. And I literally learned everything that I know, like in the trenches, school of hard knocks, all of it. So, and, through the many years of being in business and kind of like finding my way through the journey and everything, I kind of start to realize like the things that I'm good at, and the things that other people are good at. And so to answer your question, I think the transition starts when you sort of start to be much more comfortable with yourself. Like my imposter syndrome for like 15 years was like super high, right? Like, why am I the CEO of this company? It doesn't make any sense. But as I kind of learn, like, what I'm really good at, I'm really good at ideas. I'm really good at design. I'm really good at culture. It made me realize like, oh wait, there's other people who are really good at like day-to-day management, the analysis of all this data. They actually like doing that stuff. So there was a point where I realized like, oh wow, if I just empower these other folks who are naturally way better at doing some of these job functions than I am, we're going to get a lot farther. So, part of it's like stepping down my ego and saying, hey, there's better software engineers out there. There's better leaders out there for sales and marketing and everything. And then just kind of finding them and getting out of the way.
I love it. So I'm an executive coach, and so I'm going to kind of analyze you a little bit here, but this is a pattern that I see so often in the startup community. Founders that are egotistical and arrogant, and let's just face it, many of them are, because to be honest, you got to be a little bit full of yourself to think that you could pull off something crazy like building and scaling a company. Surprisingly enough, it's very hard for them to delegate because they think they can do everything better than anybody else, right? Or their standards are so high that they find it really hard to let go of things. They just are perfectionists. And that means they become a bottleneck very, very quickly, and they end up burning out their team, and it really prevents them from getting to scale. So I always say, when I'm meeting with a potential client, I say, I never coach anybody who hasn't taken a punch to the face. And what I mean by that is, a young founder, first-time founder, or just somebody who's gotten lucky, they haven't gotten a dose of humility yet, and they still think they have all the answers. And they still think everything that they think is the right way to do things, and that's just not coachable. That's just not something I can work with. So a lot of folks will come to me early on and they say, "Oh, will you coach me? Will you help me?" I say, I need you to go out there and I need you to fall down. I need you to scrape your knees and then come back and say, "Okay, I tried it. It didn't quite work. And here's where I think I need help." But in your case, I think you're self-deferential. And again, as you mentioned, even that imposter syndrome might actually be an asset or a superpower for you, because it makes you very aware of your strengths and weaknesses and say, well, for this thing to be successful, I sure as hell am not going to be the one to do X, Y, and Z. I need to hire great people and I need to get out of their way because I'm no good at this. I'm just an art school kid. Yep. But to be honest, I think, again, that self-deferential attitude is actually the reason why you've become successful.
Yeah, it's interesting. This latest startup that I'm working on, just started in the past few months. My attitude towards it, I can tell, is very different than my attitude towards previous startups. And it could, I don't know, it's just, getting older. I don't know, less energy or something. But I really find myself like sitting in the founder seat, but not really necessarily wanting to do everything. It's kind of like, okay, like we need to spin up, we got to spin up the website. We got to spin up this. We got to do some product management. Like I'm happy to hop in and do some of the functional pieces that we need done, that like from like, day zero, like the day zero stuff that like only you can do as a founder. But very quickly I found myself, we hired a marketing person and week one, I'm like, here's your marketing stuff. And they wanted tons of direction. I'm like, I will give you the high level direction. And all I want you to do is make one change to the website this week. I don't care what it is. And so this idea that, like you said, like just get people in, get them working quicker, like as fast as possible. And then the marketing guy that, is new to that project goes, well, JJ, this is only the first week. What if I make isn't good? I was like, I hope it's not good. Like the good isn't the point. You're in the seat and you're just starting to do stuff. That's the point. And so it might be good. It might be bad. We don't care.